Hi everybody, I'm Corinne Blackstone and welcome to my craft room. Before we get started, be sure to check out my exclusive Facebook group listed down below. I would love to have you a part of my group. It's really fun over there. You can post your crafts, ask your questions, and get to know other crafters. In today's video, we are going to go over some different hacks that I see people use with stenciling to see which one works the best. We're going to use Mod Podge, some paint. This is one deco paint by Folk Art. This is actually a paint and sealer in one in this really gorgeous color. This is called beeswax and it's gorgeous. And then we're just going to use some plain old acrylic paint to make our stencil. We're going to do a few little hacks that I saw and see which one comes out best. I've not tried using Mod Podge or painting over my stencil before, so I'm really excited to see how it works and if it really does make a difference. So let's get started.
Whatever we would do, we do it just for fun.
I'm going to show you how I set up my stencil really quick just to make it really super easy because we're going to cut a couple of them out at once. So I start with my design, which is just my logo. And then what I want to do is I'm going to put a square around it. So I'm going to open up a shape and I'm just going to use a square. And it'll end up being a rectangle by the time we're done. But this is a great way to make it so that it's really easy for you to tell where you need to cut your stencil. And especially if you're cutting multiple stencils, it's a really easy way to kind of keep them separate. So what I'm going to do is put my square over my design and unlock it. And then I want to drag it so that it covers the design with just a little bit of overlap on either side. Right click and send the square to the back, and then you can kind of see and adjust where you need to. Like, it's a little tall, so I'll make it a little bit shorter. It doesn't need to be really, really big around your stencil. We'll use some painter's tape to kind of keep us from going outside of our square. Now the next step is to select the square and the logo and click attach. What that's going to do is it's just going to tell Cricut Design Space to cut the logo out of the square. We don't have to use slice or anything like that for this because attaching is super simple. Now I'm going to cut 3 of these because we're going to do 3 different versions to test out what works best with our stenciling. So I'm just going to duplicate this 3 times. Technically, I guess duplicating it twice. So we have 3 of them. Now go ahead and click Make It. I'm using my Maker 3, so I need to cut it for any material on mat. Now you'll see that it looks like we could probably fit another one on here, no problem. So what I'm going to do is I like to just take this one and I'm going to turn it sideways and I slide it right here, and look at how much extra space we now have. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to the second mat, click on these 3 dots and move the object. Select the first mat and confirm. Now it'll look like it didn't show up here, but it is right here. It's just kind of on top of the other one. So go ahead and just get those where you want them. I'm going to straighten this guy back out because he was a little funky. And you can really just put them wherever you want, depending on how you want to save space. You can do whichever way you want to do it. Then from here, all we have to do is click continue. I'm cutting this on StarCraft HD, so it just cuts on the vinyl setting. I'm going to show you guys how to weed this because weeding it's super easy with these boxes. It just makes it much less of like a hassle. It's really easy to tell what needs to be weeded, and then applying the stencil is a lot easier with the box as well. So one of the reasons that these boxes make it super easy is because it tells you not to weed the outside. You want to weed all the parts that you want the paint to go through. So that's why I kind of put the box around it. Plus then it gives me that already set border so that I don't accidentally paint outside of my stencil. All you want to do is just weed everywhere you want that paint to go. Be really careful to make sure that the centers of your letters and your different designs whenever you're making are staying down, but otherwise just simply weed out where you would typically leave. Our next step is to add the transfer tape. I like to stick my transfer tape down to my table once or twice just to de-stick it just a little bit. You don't need a super sticky transfer tape when working with a stencil type of idea because you don't want that vinyl to stick really hard to it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that off, and then you want to make sure that you use a squeegee and burnish your vinyl to your transfer tape. That's going to help it stick down to the tape and make it a lot easier to peel it off. Now, I always peel my vinyl from the back, but because I have 3 on here, I'm going to go ahead and separate them. I'm just going to cut them apart into their individual little squares. You don't have to do anything too crazy here. It's really easy. Just kind of trim them down. That way you're not trying to weed all or like take all of them off at the same time because you need to place them all separately. So I peel my backing from my vinyl. I find that a lot easier, and it usually makes everything stick down a lot easier as well. And the next thing we're going to do is apply this to our wood. Now, this is just some random pumpkin shape I had laying around from a mystery box that I didn't use, but I thought it would be perfect. So I go ahead and lay my vinyl down, and then I give it a really good burnish with my squeegee. And you'll note my vinyl's hanging off the edge a little bit. That's totally okay. I'd rather have too much vinyl than not enough for a stencil. When you peel this, you're going to want to make sure that you peel it carefully, and I always hold down the corner just to be sure that that's going to stay down. Once you have that down, everything else should stay down just fine, but you can always just make sure you go really slow, peel it at a sharp angle, and just really take your time. We're going to go ahead and put all 3 of these stencils on really quickly because we need to make sure everything fits on to our pumpkin. And you can see I just do the same process where I peel it, put it on, and burnish it down, making sure it's stuck on really well. Once I've removed all of the transfer tape, I go back over the designs with my squeegee just to make sure that there are no bubbles or anything along the edges of my letters. You'll want to do this gently, but take your time. Now that we have all of our vinyl applied, we are going to do 3 different methods for this to test it out to see which one works best. So this is just a permanent vinyl from StarCraft. This one, I'm going to do nothing except stencil it. This one in the center, we will seal the stencil with Mod Podge. And then this one here on the bottom, we're going to pre-paint with the paint that we put the base coat on. And this is just a test to see which one works better. Is one better than the other? Do they all work? Do they all not work? Who knows? So let's find out. So we'll start with Mod Podge. And then this one will stay plain for now, because we need to let the Mod Podge and the paint dry before we can put our next coat on. So we'll do these ones first. I'm just going to use these cheap brushes that I got from Amazon. They're nothing special. And then we'll use a stencil brush to actually stencil these. So let's go ahead, and what it says to do is to put a pretty light but still decent coat on. And with this, you want to brush it on because it's okay if it gets under the stencil. I haven't done this before because I'm usually pretty good at getting my stencils not to bleed. So I don't typically try any of these hacks, but I thought this would be a really fun video to see if by some chance doing these little hacks makes a difference. And I see them all over TikTok and all over YouTube and stuff, and I thought, you know what? Let's just see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this Mod Podge, and I'm kind of just taking a lot of the extra off the vinyl because there's no need for it to be on the vinyl. And I'm just brushing it off onto the rest of my stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one done, and then I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the paint. Alright, so the Mod Podge is done. I'm going to go ahead and set my brush off to the side. Make sure to close this up. So next one we're going to do is this bottom one, which we're going to seal it with the original paint color. So this is a One Decor paint from Folk Art, and this is paint and sealer in one. I wanted to try it with the paint and sealer in one just to see how it works, but you can do acrylic paint as well. So again, I watched a couple videos just to see kind of what they recommend and how they do it. And the way they did it was they painted over the stencil completely, and they painted in a bunch of different directions to kind of make sure that they seal, again, they call it sealing. I don't really know that it's sealing the stencil. So I'm just kind of making sure to brush stroke it in a bunch of different ways. And they don't say that you have to do a really thick layer. So I'm doing kind of a thinner layer just so it'll dry faster, because obviously I want to get this and try it out. So again, I'm going in all the different directions. I'm just making sure that I cover the whole thing. And again, I just up and down, left, right, all the swirls, because you want to get that paint under the edges, apparently. So again, I'm just gonna go ahead and get this all put on here. Make sure I get it swirled around that E pretty good. And then I'm just gonna give it a quick brush to get any like that extra paint off of the vinyl, because we really don't need it, and that way it'll dry faster on the vinyl. So we just want to get all that excess off so we don't have to wait for that to dry to stencil. So just kind of brushing all of that off, but I'm brushing it through the stencil as I do it. So I'm just kind of thinning that out just so that it will dry quicker. All right, we are going to let these two items dry. And then the next thing that we'll do is do the stenciling. So we're going to just use some plain old Apple Barrel jet black paint. I think the black is going to show us if it bleeds or not a little bit better than some of the other colors. So we'll go ahead and wait for this to dry and then we can stencil. Everything is dry, so what we're going to do is use this Apple Barrel paint, and I always just use like a scrap piece of the backing from my vinyl to put the paint on, and I'm going to show you guys why. So what we want to do is use a dry brush technique, meaning you don't want, like when you tap your paint in, you don't want a bunch of globs of paint on your brush. So what you want to do is kind of tap it off all around, and you want to have it pretty dry before you go in and stencil. And you want to stencil using a tapping motion. So just like this, and it is really loud and annoying after a while, but this is how you're going to stencil so that you don't get any bleed. You're going to go up and down motions, dry brush, and I know it's looking like I'm like losing out on paint. That's okay, because we're going to do couple coats. That's the other key to this, is light coats. So don't worry, we're just going to do lots of light little coats, and you can see that it's just up and down. Now this is not a brush I would necessarily recommend, but it works okay. I would get a better quality brush the next time I went to do stenciling, but this one will do for now. And you don't have to press really hard. Like, I'm not hitting hard. It sounds like I am, but this is a really light touch. And then you just kind of give it a really nice light coat. And you can always go back and you go into that dry portion where you kind of tapped off. Do the same thing, tap off some of that paint, and come back through. Nice up and down motions all over. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to stencil all of these. I'm not going to make you watch me do this. You don't need to see me sit here and stencil. So I'll go ahead and speed this up for you guys. So now that we've finished, I will tell you one reason why I don't recommend this brush, and this is like one from Michaels, super cheap, is it sheds like crazy. So like I was constantly pulling out little pieces of the junk, like the bristles, and so this is not cool. So what we're gonna do is take off our stencils. Now you can let them dry, you don't have to, but this one kind of folded over, so pull that off. So this is the one, we'll just review really quick. Let me slide this out of the way so that it's not in the way. We'll review really quick. So this is the one that we didn't do anything to, no pre-treatment, and I did kind of get off the edge, it's fine. Then this is the one with Mod Podge, and then this one here is the one that we painted with the base paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this off, and it might peel the paint off the pumpkin, I'm not sure. This is not like expensive wood, so it's not the best wood. But we're gonna do our best to get this off as cleanly as we can. And we might need to get the pin pen out and pull some of it off with the pin pen, because it's ripped a little bit in some spots. So that's okay, not a big deal. But when you use a pin pen, you wanna be really careful to get this off without getting paint kind of everywhere. So we'll just kind of peel it off, and then I'm gonna stick it right to itself. There we go. And we'll come in and do the middles of the letters here in a minute, but I do want to try to get this T started here. And that's probably like my least favorite part of stenciling, is trying to get the stencil off, especially these like middle pieces. They drive me kind of crazy, but that's okay. We'll work with it. Now this was not sanded. This wood was just straight from, actually this was from a Mr. Crafty Pants mystery box that I never got around to actually making the project, but I thought it would work perfect for this because it's not perfect wood. So it's not super smooth, but we did use a paint and sealer in one. And I'll give you guys a nice up close look at these once I get all of the vinyl peeled off. So let me go ahead and get this all popped off, and then I can show you what everything looks like. Okay, so this is all peeled, ready to go. I've got all the centers of the letters out. So let's start at the very, very top. This one here is the one that I didn't do anything to except paint the board and then paint the stencil. This definitely has some flaws. You can kind of see where it did bleed into the wood. It's definitely not perfect. It's not terrible, but it's not perfect. That E is pretty bad. So this is not like the wood that I would normally stencil on. I always recommend stenciling on something super smooth. But if you're using a wood that's like this one, which is like the wood cutouts from 143, I wouldn't do it this way. Because look down here. This is the Mod Podge one. Now ignore the kind of paint that got around it, because that was just me not being careful removing the stencil. But look at how much better that is. The only thing I will say is that I did pull up a piece of wood somehow, right in between the I and the N. And then there's a little piece missing on the heart as well. So it did pull up some of the wood, but again, this is probably not wood that I would recommend. And I did get a little bleed right on that E there, but it really is pretty good. All things considered, I think the Mod Podge really worked very, very well. And then this final one right here is the one that we painted with the base color first and then painted the stencil. Now again, ignore like the paint right here and the paint over here. That was just my poor painting skills and removing the stencil skills. But look at those edges. They are super clean. They look really, really nice. It didn't really pull up the wood anywhere except a couple spots where I accidentally like stabbed it, like right there in the B. There's a little spot. That was me removing the center of the B. This is a pretty soft wood, so when removing like the stencils, you got to be extra careful with it. But I typically use pine, poplar, walnut, things like that when I stencil. I don't typically stencil on this kind, but I will say that this worked really, really well. I really think the Mod Podge and painting it are the way to go. This did not come out good. I'm a little disappointed in it, but I will say I really think that doing a Mod Podge layer or the layer of the paint really makes a big difference. I was a little skeptical. I've always just done it without doing it, and I've never really had bleed problems. But again, I don't use this wood. I think doing this will be very, very helpful. If you guys know of any tips or tricks that you use to stencil, leave those in the comments down below. I want to know what you guys do. Have you tried using Mod Podge? Have you tried painting it with the base color? Do you just go after it without doing anything special? Tell me down below, because I'm always curious what you guys do and if it works for you. I hope you guys learned a few tips and tricks to stenciling here, whether it was learning that Mod Podge and the base color paint works pretty well, or some tips and tricks about using brushes. Let me know what you learned. I would love to hear from you guys. I hope you guys had such a wonderful time on this tutorial. I know I had fun making it. Have a wonderful day, and as always, happy crafting!